Hello and welcome to Bonus Action Dash. My name is Jaren and this is Sunday D&D Prep, an actual prep stream for my Sunday night home game. I'm running Rime of the Frostmaiden. We're in the final chapter, Chapter 7. The players are exploring the necropolis of Ithrin. Now, the purpose of this stream is to pull back the curtain a little bit, show you what goes into prepping a D&D session, and also to show you that you don't need 20 years of experience to run a good session of D&D. There are plenty of really good actual play streams on the internet, lots of great shows. You all know what D&D looks like, how to play it, what a session looks like. The purpose of this is to show the behind the scenes of what goes into a prep session, of what it really takes to get ready for a session of D&D. And as I mentioned, if nothing else, if this is just entertainment, awesome, but I hope this is at least inspiring. I haven't been running that long. This is I started at the beginning of COVID, and it's about 2.5 years later. I have completed a full campaign in the form of Storm King's Thunder, and we're almost to the end of Rime of the Frostmaiden. Doing the math, it's a little over 100 sessions, 2.5 years. I don't have a ton of experience. I don't have the experience of like Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, Mike Shea, but really passionate about running, and I think I've learned quite a bit in the time that I've been running. So I just wanted to show that it does not take a ton of experience to run good D&D. You need some fundamentals, and I'm here to at least show the way that I do it. Might not be the way that everybody does it, but let's get into it. As always, this stream, these are the notes that I would use for my actual session. So this isn't just a show, just to show things that they're ideas. I would be doing this whether or not this is on stream. That said, it's kind of the culmination of all week of thinking about the game. Maybe, I take 5 minutes out of my day and I open up my notes, jot down some things that I'm thinking about, because I'm not going to wait till Sunday. Maybe I'll jot down some things to remind myself. And I also went ahead and I do type some stuff up before I click the stream button, because I don't think it's very entertaining to watch somebody type into a keyboard on stream, and I don't really want to do that. I want to talk about the campaign and the things that I'm thinking about in this endgame, rather than spend a lot of time typing and reading. So I have done some work ahead of time. I don't just spend an hour in preparation for my sessions, but these are the notes that I will be using. So we are postponing tonight's session because about half of the players were not going to be there. But we're going to do this as usual, and I think maybe if I don't have this upcoming session until next week, we'll still have the stream, we'll still do some review, and take a look at the notes. If you want to look at old session recaps in session prep, and they're not in the Twitch VOD, you can find me on YouTube. The link to that should be in the profile. I think it's Bonus Action -0 on YouTube. But let's get into the prep for today. Enough chatter. So, review of last time. The players, they were stationed. I think we were somewhere in this vicinity. I think they had just finished one of the towers and were making their way back. I think they started the session at the Tower of Conjuration, inside this magnificent mansion that they have found as a temporary base camp. As the previous owners are no longer taking up residence there, they are now able to make it their home base in Ithrin, a great safe place for them to return to and rest. And they began the day, they long rested and said, okay, we're going to start fresh, and then we're going to go face off against Dnd, see if we can acquire the piece of the Arcane Octad that he has. They found out last time that he's already gone through one of these towers. I think it was, the Tower of Evocation. He'd already gone through, obtained that piece of the puzzle, and now they need to go and get it from him. So that's what they did. It was initially sort of a negotiation, or at least let's find out what you know. We don't need it to come to blows just yet, even though they were all kind of chomping at the bits to initiate that combat. And they found out a little bit. It was sort of the time for the Villain Monologue, right? It's time for Dnd to tell what he knows, why he's here. Maybe he's kind of being dishonest. You don't really know. But they did a really clever thing in saying, like, hey, we'll give you a piece that we have if you give us your piece. and made a decent persuasion check, and they did a really clever thing, and they gave him the piece of the Tower of Illusion from way back when they encountered it at the Caves of Hunger. And they said, because the thing with the illusion piece was when you first look at it, it reads like something else. And then you realize that it's got some illusion magic on it. You discover what it actually says. So they said, hey, we went to the Tower of Illusion. This is what they saw. And they told them the illusory piece. So it was not technically a lie. A really cool and clever bit of deception, you know. When Dnd went to give his piece, he kind of leaned in and did that really tropey thing where he tried to grapple Sarah Gritz, the wizard, try to grapple and begin casting a spell like he was going to hold her hostage in exchange for knowledge. And fortunately, she rolled high enough to not get grappled. He still was ready to cast a spell, but at that point, initiative was on, and they began the fight. I thought it was a pretty interesting fight. The white bodyguard Krintas, I didn't level him up at all, so he was kind of a pushover. But Dnd Alpha, the real Dnd, the one who's kind of a jerk, threw out some good damage. You know, he was casting stuff like Fireball, and I think the first round was the Mind Prison spell. So he was dealing some okay damage. Through some persuasion checks, I think it was, they convinced I don't really want to call him fake Dnd. It's the one that they found at the Tower of the Lost Spire of Netheril, and were able to turn him into a real person. Convinced him to just kind of fake fight. You know, they said, we're not gonna kill you, just like pretend like you're fighting me. And so they got him to just kind of pretend like he was fighting. It was really kind of entertaining. And got Dnd kind of down low on HP. Gwendril, our cleric, used he's a cleric of Saloon, the Twilight Cleric. That was good timing for that. I live in a great neighborhood. I don't know if you can hear that. I think it's getting picked up a little bit. I'm looking at the mic levels here. But our Twilight Cleric Gwendril grappled Dnd, sprouted the spectral wings, and I think it's called Step of the Night. It's whatever the thing allows him to fly in dim light. And took him up like 30 feet. Was going to question him, and Sarah Gritz, kind of seeing everything unfold, really pushed to her brink. She had already taken a bunch of damage and was in her werebear form. Used her climbing speed to climb up the side of the obelisk, jumped out, teeth into Dnd, wrestled him from Gwen's grapple. They both fell to the ground. Dnd ended up kind of like breaking his leg, but it was dead at that point. Was below 0 HP. And Sarah also fell, taking enough damage to knock her unconscious. Gwen flew down, was able to like bring Dnd back up to life because he still had some questions. There's still some questions to be asked. And Sarah, fortunately, this is our first death save of the campaign too. Sort of interesting that it was a natural 20. So she came to consciousness with 1 HP. And they began to question Dnd a little bit further, and it was this kind of time to do the villain monologue. They wanted to know why he's here, what he's doing, is Esther okay, what he did with her. And so the party found out that he sent Esther to the top of the tower to retrieve whatever key can activate this obelisk, because he wants to go back and correct Karsus's mistakes. If you know the history of the Netherese and Karsus' folly, there's a really cool story of a high-level wizard named Karsus that tried to cast a spell that would have taken over the powers of Mistral temporarily. He didn't succeed because she cut off the power of magic. She cut the weave off from everybody. Ended up destroying her in the process, but it's what saved magic from being in the clutches of a human. Dnd, knowing that story, wanted to go back and fix it and actually go beyond the barrier, open that door, get into the club that Mistral says you can't get into. After that all kind of went down, Mistral put a cap on magic and said, nope, no one's going past 9th level, even though it's possible. And Dnd wanted to go back and find out and correct the mistakes of Karsus and get that power, you know. After Dnd was disposed of, after they found out the information and got the piece of the Arcane Octad. They return kind of having taken a good deal of damage. They return back to the Tower of Conjuration to have a rest and to sort of think about their next actions. They weren't really in a state to go and continue fighting against Scriven Scry. So they decided to head back to the tower, heal up, consider the next options, maybe start fresh the next morning. And it also so happened it was the last night of chess and the full moon according to the calendar. So they did a really neat thing. They brought, which is now, I guess, Dnd Prime, because they killed the original Dnd. The Dnd that they made real at the Lost Spire, it gets kind of confusing because they're both named Dnd. He's now the single and only Dnd. He was the one that was not really hostile towards the party, that they convinced to not fight back. And they always really liked him. He was like a sliver of the Dnd's personality, right? When he made him as a simulacrum, he took on one facet of Dnd's personality, which happened to be, you know, mostly nice and cordial and not really combative and not aggressive, you know. So the party really likes this Dnd, and they brought him back to the Tower of Conjuration in the mansion. He's sort of like a genie in the lamp set free. He no longer has to take orders from somebody. He gets to choose what he wants to do, and he doesn't know how to handle that. He doesn't know what he wants to do. So the decision that he made was he's going to sit in the Tower of Conjuration, consider those options while the party goes off and does their thing. And I have some ideas. The party, however, this was really interesting. It's the full moon, and our cleric Gwendril is a follower of Saloon. They're in a mansion that can be whatever you want it to be. So at his request, they found, because you can make the mansion whatever you want, basically, they found themselves a very large, expansive room with a beautiful field and sort of a Sistine Chapel sort of domed ceiling, a fire pit in the middle of this grassy field, and a starry night sky overhead on the ceiling. Each one of these stars sort of depicting servants of Saloon, and the moon itself in full moon form showing Saloon's glory. And they had a really cool night of ritual and celebration to honor Saloon, and debauchery and drinking and all sorts of good, completely declothed, naked fun. It's the best I can say it. It was a good time, and you know because it was great because we have a new follower of Saloon in Marses who had recently been a convert. She offered herself as a way to save her friend from the arcane blight. So it was a cool celebration. Everyone was there to witness it, and they rested up. That's where we ended the session on the following morning. The brand new month, the month of Tarsak. I may be butchering that pronunciation. Forgive me, please. But that's where we left off. So let's get into preparation for today's session, which might be Wednesday. I'm sort of negotiating right now, seeing when we can hold the next session, or it might be next Sunday. I don't know. So the last things that we need to do here, they have one last encounter before they have all 8 pieces of the Arcane Octad. And that is this showdown with Scriven Scry. 1 or 2 sessions ago, they had discovered, they went to the Tower of Divination, used this telescope that could locate where the spellbook holding this last piece is, and it was in possession of Scriven Scry, the Arcanoloft they encountered in the library many sessions ago. And so they know that they're going to have to either fight to the death with Scriven Scry. They also have a negotiating tool in the form of the awakened albino penguin Kingsport, who is Scriven Scry's servant, for lack of a better term, and who also really does not want to go back to Scriven Scry. So there's sort of an ethical quandary there in, do we exchange this for the thing that we desperately need and we don't want to get into more fights before we go fight more stuff? Or is it a fight to the death? Do we just take it by force? Do we give Kingsport back to this guy who's kind of an asshole? We're not really sure. So I'm thinking that they're just going to fight, because that's kind of the way they've been talking. So I know I needed to get the Scriven Scry fight ready. We'll likely have the first encounter with Ariel Larthus. Once they do the Arcane Octad, the force field drops. One of 2 things will happen is they'll either go straight for the Mythalar, or they're going to hear the door open in this support structure and they'll go right into the tower. So one of two things. Either way, I need to prepare for some form of an encounter with Ariel Larthus. God, that is such a mouthful of a name. And then we need to have the Spire ready. And my plan for the Spire is to have most of it ready to go. I don't want to just try to prepare one level at a time, because honestly, I have no idea how long it's going to take them to get through. And I'd rather over prepare than under prepare, right? I have learned that it's really difficult to prepare just one session of D&D. It's much easier to prepare sections of a campaign, because I have no idea how long it's going to take them to get through stuff, and I'd rather over prepare than under prepare. And if I over prepare, that means I know enough about the world that I can improvise on the fly if I need to. So my plan is to kind of have an idea of how most of the tower operates. So let's tick that off. Let's actually come back to that. I'm going to go through some other things first. My format for note-taking here, if you're familiar with the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master from Sly Flourish and Mike Shea, this is basically the format that I'm using. I found it incredibly useful. I've done it for the entirety of Frostmaiden, and I'm using Notion for my notes. It's been a really handy database, and what's cool is I can go back and see all my old notes here if I needed to. And you can see I've done this format in Notion since the very beginning, since session 0, all the way back in, gosh, it's been over a year now. July 18th, 2021 is when we had our session 0. So our in-game start date here is the first of the month, the new month, 1489 DR. Of course, they don't know yet that it's not actually that month out in the real world. It's relative time to them. I'm doing a nifty thing where we're going to kind of mess with time a little bit. They now know that Ithrin was messing with chronomancy, with time magic. So once they get out of Ithrin, a lot more time has passed. And that's sort of my justification for once they get back, certain events have played out in a certain way. But that said, for our heroes today, it is the first of the month. Our characters, we have Gwendrel, our tiefling cleric, Twilight Cleric of Saloon. Yes, I am running a Twilight Cleric in this campaign. It has not been broken, I don't think. It's a great class. I would say that getting bonus healing every turn kind of makes encounters a little bit less fun, because player characters never really go down that much, and I've had to really throw some difficult stuff at them. For instance, it's a party of level 9s right now, and the hardest thing that they have faced is the Arcanaloth, who's a challenge rating 12, and I think they even were going toe-to-toe with him. So, they're pretty hearty for a party of level 9s. But I imagine Gwendrel is feeling... I think Gwendrel's probably feeling a couple of things right now. One is maybe some frustration at not being able to get more information from Dnd, because he was sort of disposed of pretty quickly. And 2, probably a lot of joy, because Marses is now a follower of Saloon. He's brought somebody into the fold. And his character design, Gwendrel, the character, has said in sessions that he feels like he's done right by his god. He's made peace with his course of action. So next we have Sarah Gritz, our female human wizard, a wizard of the scribes, who can also turn into a werebear. And I think Sarah's character, Sarah Gritz, is probably having a bit of a crisis of finding out her place in the world, of figuring out who she is. She seemed to be at least interested in knowing more about Saloon during this night ritual that they just had. And it seems like maybe her interests are being pulled in different directions all the time, because she's not really had a close relationship with her goddess, Mistra. And I think, if I remember correctly, she also follows another goddess. I gotta check. In the original backstory that I was given from this player, I thought for sure that this character followed multiple gods. I could be wrong. It's in here somewhere. Nevertheless, I think she probably is feeling a bit of, like I said, crisis of her place in the world. She's not really had a close relationship with Mystra. I get the two forms mixed up all the time. It's not really had a close relationship with Mystra. And so, like, you know, on one direction, she is a magic user trying to be in tune with the weave and learn all these spells. In another, she is, you know, has this curse of lycanthropy and has sometimes triggering into turning into werebear form. On the other hand, she's just seen one of her allies make a very positive change in her life when Mars has decided to be a follower of Saloon. And, you know, I imagine that Sarah is feeling a little bit like, is that a direction for me? I'm not really sure. So that's, we'll see how that plays out, but that's kind of where Sarah is at. And also really curious about, is her friend Esther still alive? We'll see. We'll see where that goes. Mars's Romazi is our female tiefling barbarian. And I think the next time that the characters at the party levels up, which probably will be pretty soon, we're going to have our first multi-classing character, as I offered the player the option to multi-class into Paladin if she wanted. And she was very excited about that, thought it sounded really cool because she's just become a follower of Saloon, and that makes sense. I'm always a fan of multi-classing as a narrative option, less so as a player-driven choice, right? I'm not so much a fan of, cool, now that we hit 5th level, my wizard's going to take a level in Rogue, just because, or in something else, because I want to get that bonus that they get at level 1. I'm not really a fan of that style of play. I am a fan of, you know, if your character has been making specific choices over the course of a level or two, we can talk about what options for multi-classing you might have, because it makes sense for the narrative. It makes sense for the actions that you have made. I don't like it as just a player-driven choice that doesn't make any sense. So because of that, her character's made some actions, and Paladin makes perfect sense. So I think she's going to take that, and it's going to be really exciting. Not that Paladins at level 1 are broken, or that like dipping into that is going to be game breaking, but narratively it's going to be really cool. And I also need to remember that because like there's one of two things I need to do. I'm going to do the second option, but multi-classing has certain prereqs. For Paladin, I believe it's Charisma 13. Mars's Charisma is currently 12. So the first option is for me to just say, you know what, we're going to buck the prereqs. You can just multi-class. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to do the second option, which is to say, hey, when you level up, you can buff your Charisma by 1 so that you can meet that prereq and we can stay rules as written. I'm just giving you a free stat upgrade. Congratulations. I think I'm going to do that one because that's cooler and more exciting. Last up, we have Wabbajack Forcewalker, aka Jack Forrest, our male Warforged fighter. He's the Echo Knight fighter who summons his Echo left and right. I think, what has he been calling it? I don't remember. He's got a clever name for it. But he also still has the orb, which is the Professor Orb, Professor Scant, who is, you know, source of information for the players going forward. Might come in much more useful once they get into the Spire of Ariel Larthus, or once they start checking out the Mythalar. But Jack Forrest, I think he, similar to Sarah Gritz, probably has some desire to find his place in the bigger world. And once we get into the Spire, I plan on using some of these locations in the Spire, maybe some of these like side rooms that aren't really much of anything, as storage for more automatons, more things that are sort of like him. I had already sort of alluded to the fact that way back when, Ithrin used to use creatures like him to mine Chardalyn. I want to put that in here somewhere, and I think I'm going to I'll make one of these rooms like a storage room for, you know, they're not called Warforged, but they're Warforged that are no longer active. Somewhere in this Spire. I think that could be a cool nod. Our start for tonight, or for the next session, is basically they're waking up, making their final preparations on the morning of the new month to see, you know, and figure out how they're going to approach this encounter with Scriven Scry. And then they get to do the whole Arcane Octad thing and get to see what happens then. I don't think anybody knows. I don't know if they have any idea of what's going to happen, which is really exciting for me. So our to-do is we need to make sure that we have the fight in order. What we're going to do for our first encounter with Ariel Larthus, if and when they go straight to the Mythalar, and then we need to know what's going on in the Spire. So I am using the secrets and clues method. I'll come back to the to-do in a second. Let me get through all this junk first, and then we'll come back to the to-do. Where was I? So our secrets and clues for this next upcoming session, I don't have 10. Sometimes I forget stuff, and sometimes things just come out. You know, there's oftentimes I'll just improvise things that are like those become the secrets of that session, but I think this should be enough. You know, there's also the very likelihood of they'll get through some of this Spire, and things that they find out in here become the secrets that I just didn't write down. I use a combination of writing down the secrets as well as like using the book notes, because you never know what they're going to look through, or what they're going to get to. And since this is a pre-written module, I don't have 10 generic secrets that they could discover that can really go in any place, right? A lot of these can be moved around, but there are certain things that really are hard tied to specific locations. You know, for instance, they can't find out about Veneranda until they encounter Veneranda. Veneranda is totally willing to help them out, but that's not information they could just get from anywhere. So our secrets for tonight, well, first of all, the Arcane Octad is going to disable the force field. That's the first secret. They'll find that out pretty much as soon as they do the Octad. They'll find out all about the Aetherin Mythalar, should they attune to it, what it can do, and I have a link to that. The great thing about Notion is it's super easy to make these links. All you have to do is copy paste the URL onto an existing word. Also, Scant knows that this is on the smaller side of Mythalars. This is really not something that players need to know. It's something that they could know, though. This is a smaller Mythalar, as some of them can get up to 150 feet in diameter. Really powerful stuff. Ariel Larthus is still attuned and very defensive of the Mythalar. He's not going to let anybody else attune to it while he's still living. There are many powerful magics still holding a lot of effects together inside the Spire. A lot of dangerous magic. There is Everlast, this guide protector, I suppose, you know, spectral spirit, whatever you want to call it, that manifests in this weird looking chamber here. There's the living blade of disaster that guards, I think that is here, maybe? Yeah, this is where the two living blades of disaster. That's going to be a nasty encounter, man. I feel sorry for the characters, because that's going to be an insane fight. There's a lot of powerful magic that still keeps things secured here. There is the entire ballroom that still is held together by illusion magic. It looks like there are glamorous, citizens dressed in gowns and suits and all sorts of stuff. There are servants kind of meandering about with trays full of food and drink. There's music playing, and it's all a lie. It's all an illusion, disguising these three brains in a jar. There is Veneranda, who is a magically, created entity. So all sorts of magic that holds this tower together. They'll find out about Veneranda, who is willing to help the players in exchange for an agreement to go and retrieve the Staff of Power in order to fix Aetherin. Veneranda wants nothing more than to return Aetherin to its state before it fell. So that is Veneranda. And then there's also mention of an Austurian artifact that was discovered by Aether Mages long ago and was moved to the stasis chamber for further study. I don't remember. I think they can find that out. It's in one of these alcoves, maybe C. This might be the study. I think, let's go back up. I think 19C is a study. Council chambers is what it's called. And it's got some desks, some scrolls, writing materials, and there's some notes that they can find mentioning this spindle. This spindle is the source of why Ythryn fell, and why it fell 4 years prior to every other Netherese city. Ythryn didn't fall because of Karsus. Ythryn was already fallen. So that is why. Maybe that can be an additional secret. NPCs, locations, I don't really need because it's just the Spire. NPCs, I guess there's not really any relevant NPCs in this particular one. There's the Arcanoloth, Scriven Scry. I did do some research on Arcanoloths, and there's some fascinating stuff. I think I can just look that up really quickly here and show you what I found. Oops, I don't need to right click. If we go into... No, it's not here. I need to search for... There's a whole page in D&D Beyond on Yugoloths, and there are these really fascinating creatures. It's... where is it here? Here we go. There are these really fascinating fiends that come in, one of these forms: Arcanoloth, Mesoloth, Nikoloth, and Ultraloth. But as the story goes, it was first thought they were created by hags, right? They were hoping to create an army of fiends not bound to the 9 hells. In the course of making, I was kind of reading here, in the course of making this army, these hags created these 4 tomes that recorded their true name, and it was called the Books of Keeping. The reason that this is relevant and important is because if you know the true name of a fiend, you have power over it. And these books were sort of lost and scattered about the plains. No, they don't know where, nobody knows where they are. They were just sort of bounding around the plains to kind of come into the possession of an unknowing bystander, basically. And Scriven Scry, the Arcanoloth, is in search of these tomes. Who knows really why he wants all this power, but I think that's enough to say that, well, he wants to find these books because if you know the true name of every Yugoloth that exists, my God, you have some crazy power. And that's kind of what Yugoloths want. They're like mercenary for-hired fiends that just want power. Some of them are more loyal than others. Some of them are very self-serving. Arcanoloths, very self-serving. So that is one of our... he's like both an NPC and a monster, but really kind of fascinating stuff about Yugoloths. And also, when they die, they don't just die. They kind of dissolve into this weird pool of ichor. And it's not like they're just completely dead. They go back to the plane of Gehenna, right? Apologies if I'm butchering that as well. I don't know Forgotten Realms lore as well as a lot of people do, but yeah, cool stuff. So I got to remember that because that could be a really cool way to describe when and if he actually dies. So I need to remember. Oh, I do have, I prepped these fights, right? So I went back, I organized the way that my pages are laid out a little bit here and put the relevant pages down at the bottom. We've got the global map that I obviously need. Then I have all my tokens on one page. Now, I purchased this module on Roll20. I didn't have the purchase module for Storm King's Thunder, but I wanted to see what purchasing a module on Roll20 was like at least once. And when you purchase this, they give you a whole page that's all the tokens that you might need, that are all the monsters that you might encounter in this setting, all the named monsters, as well as all the named NPCs that you might need a token for. And this is a really good practice. I think if you're using Roll20 or I guess any online VTT, doing this is a really good idea. Especially, I would at the very least do this for your characters, because you can go in. What I did here is I went in and set up all the token settings. So I don't have these tied to character sheets in Roll20, but what I did do is I went ahead and set up all their dynamic lighting. I made sure that their night vision was correct, their dark vision. I set it to this dimming effect because I think it looks better. And, you know, if there's somebody that has a lantern, I can turn that on here. That way I can, and I have everybody's thing that they can summon. I have a cleric that can cast spiritual weapon, and I have the Echo Knight fighter, Jack Forrest, who summons an echo. So I have all this stuff ready to go. Whenever I need new tokens, I copy it from here because these settings are already in place. And then I drag that over onto the new page. I think doing it this way, it's a lot easier than trying to copy tokens over from old pages, or just trying to, you know, reset it every single time. This way you have all the settings in place. You know ahead of time that they're going to be good. So highly recommend doing it this way. Then I've got the relevant maps that are coming up. The Arboretum, where they're going to have this encounter with Scriven. The Mythalar, where they might see Ariel Larthus for the first time. Well, they've seen him already, but the first time they're going to encounter him. And then the actual Spire map. So the Arboretum map is where they're going to encounter Scriven. This is a gigantic map, by the way, but it's the one that I already used, so I need to use it again. I have him, and I got this really cool animated token just so I can remember where the heck Scriven is. He's kind of hanging out on these rocks. Might not even use that, but it's going to be an encounter in the Arboretum. All the monsters that were formerly there, not going to join in. The Blights are going to just kind of hang out in the bushes. The center tree, the Nether Oak, is, you know, he's still dead. He's not going to join in the fight. But for this, here's something that, man, I wish Wizards would do. I hope they make some good design changes for future monster manuals. But what's really annoying about running casters is how their spells are organized. This is really annoying. There's some things that I don't need. I don't need to know that they have Identify. I don't need Mage Hand. I don't need Floating Disc. They're going to be a combat creature. I need to know what their most powerful spells are. And I just need to know like what they're going to do, what the spells do. There's a lot of stuff that could be better organized here because this is kind of a mess. And keeping track of spell slots is also a pain as well. So I'm hoping that in the future they do casters differently. And I'm okay if monster casters don't use spell slots, if they use some other system, because it's never going to matter. Some other system that serves dungeon masters running this crap, because trying to keep track of spell slots is a pain, right? So for my ease of running this stuff, I just wrote down what the spells are that they're likely to cast in combat, the most powerful spells, right? I have at the top what their spell save DC is, what their plus to hit is with spell attacks. It's on here, but I don't want to have to go hunting for it visually in the middle of combat. Have that up here. I have their AC, how many hit points that they have, and I will count up from 0. I'm not going to count backwards because it's way easier to add than subtract in the middle of combat. And I might even change what that number is in the middle too, because I'm trying to tell a story here. I wrote myself a note to remember that they can action teleport. When I first ran it, I totally forgot that they have action teleport, and I was using Dimension Door to do it, but they have action teleport, which is way better. They have chain lightning, and I kind of give myself a summary of what that does. Finger of Death, banishment, hold monster. These are all the things that they're going to do in combat. So this encounter is pretty much ready to go. He's an intelligent creature, self-serving. He's not going to immediately try to put himself in harm's way. He might come at this from a perspective of, hey, I was just defending myself. If you guys want to start with some better manners this time, start off on a better foot, I will trade with you. Give me back Kingsport. I'll give you the book that you want, and we can go our separate ways. But let's not forget, it was you that attacked me first. I was defending myself. Don't forget that. That's probably going to be his attitude. Because, you know, again, we need to remember that encounters aren't just piles of stats. He's not just a bag of meat with hit points. He's a creature that's got objectives, and not every creature fights to the death. Keep that in mind. And then go pick up a copy of The Monsters Know What They're Doing, because it's an excellent resource. Next up is the encounter with Ariel Larthus. And I considered for a long time how I wanted to do this. If you read the book, it says that as soon as the players try to attune to the Mythallar, a Tomb Tapper shows up. And that never made sense to me. It also didn't make sense to me that players could just attune to it and be good with it, because you could kind of just bypass everything in the Spire of Ariel Larthus then and go straight to the endgame. And why would Ariel Larthus just not be attuned to this Mythallar? And also, like, I'm going to change a little bit too, because why is it such a small range to be attuned to the Mythallar that you have to stay within 30 feet of it? I think that's what it says if you look at the thing. Let's see here. Requires attunement. Maybe I had that wrong. Maybe it's just you need to finish a short rest within 30 feet of it. A creature turned to the device can use its properties. Perhaps I read that wrong. Maybe there's not a distance that you stop being attuned to it. Let me see here. There might be some special rules for attunement that I'm forgetting. Okay, let's check it out. Creature's attunement ends to an item the creature no longer satisfies the prereqs if the item has been more than 100 feet away for at least 24 hours. Okay, so this is probably fine. I don't need to change the rules for attunement. So Ariel Larthus, as long as he doesn't spend more than a full 24 hours fully away from this thing, he's still attuned to it, which makes perfect sense. So it never made sense to me that just a Tomb Tapper shows up and Ariel Larthus doesn't try to defend the Mythallar, because that's kind of what the book says, I think. So I think I had thought about maybe they have an actual encounter with Ariel Larthus, and once he's down on HP, he retreats to his sanctum in the top of the tower, which would be a very grindy fight, and then they have to go into the tower. I mentioned this in a past stream, but I want to make sure that we're maintaining momentum in the campaign. And the more that it's kind of dragged out, I think if we have both a fight with Scrivenscry and a nearly full fight with Ariel Larthus, that's going to be the session. And it's going to take us kind of a while to get through the Spire. I would like to encourage, after they have done this fight with Scrivenscry, that it's pretty much going to be, within, 10-15 minutes that we get into the actual Spire. Because there's some really cool stuff there, and I want to keep the momentum. So I think what I'm going to do is, if they try to attune to it, they hear a scream in their head that tells them to kind of back off, and is like a scream of no. And everybody that tries to attune to it, or anybody in the range, might be a better way of doing it, has to survive against the scream. If we go to Demi-Lich, I should probably... Here, I'll show you how easy it is to hotlink in Notion. I just have to copy this, go down to Ariel Larthus, highlight it, Command-V. Oh, of course. Let me demonstrate how easy it is and then I mess it up. What is going on here? Let's try this again. Something's messed up. There we go. So they have to save against this scream effect. Oh, the howl effect is what it's called. So Demi-Lich will show up and then sort of retreat. I might make it that he does this from the Mythallar itself. So everyone within 30 feet, he doesn't need to be present, but he does this once and then bolts. Anybody that is within 30 feet of the Mythallar makes a save, or else they drop to 0 hit points. And then he summons a Tomb Tapper. And that's the thing that they fight. Because the first time they encountered a Tomb Tapper they were at 8th level. They're now at 9th. Technically, theoretically, this should be a little easier. And they also know the Tomb Tapper's tricks. So it should be easier. but I think that's what I'm going to do. Ariel Larthus Howl, then bolts, summons Tomb Tapper, and that's the fight. And I think that should be a decent fight. It's not going to be crazy hard. It's just going to be one that is designed to, I guess, be a little bit of a resource drain, I suppose. But it also makes sense story-wise. I'm not trying to, make this a kill the players encounter, which very well could be the case if they fight Ariel Larthus. I mainly want to demonstrate that he's kind of a challenging foe. Demi-Liches are challenge rating 18, so maybe fighting him right now at level 9 is not going to be the best decision. I think after this fight, once they get into the tower, is where I'm going to have them level up. So that's another thing to note that I need to put down in my notes. I'll put this in the to do, which I will do off screen. Review multi-classing Paladin. And make sure that I have that ready to go. And then let's just take a quick look at the Spire itself. So the first floor, once they get into it, they ascend these stairs, they ascend the support strut, they find a set of, solid oaken doors, and there's a Magian kind of looking out, psychically telling them to leave. He's going to cast some spells to try to get them to leave if they don't. I think I need to find some good music for this room too. Once they get in, this is the ballroom. It's got all the dancing and music, and everyone's happy and fun. They have these side chambers to explore, which they can find out more stuff about Ithrin. 19. Let me just review these real quick. I might make some notes on the map here off screen just to remind myself what all these are. There's so many rooms here. 19D, obviously that's the guard passage. That's where the Magian is. F. So E is the liquefaction chamber. It is where Veneranda resides. And I think she's not hostile. She just has this one goal to fix the obelisk, return Ithrin to its former glory. F is staff storage. This is where there's a bunch of staves. They don't really do anything. They're just decorative. G is the den. That is all the way over here. There's couches and all sorts of lounge stuff. There's a chest, the Abracadabras, that Ariel Larthus and his guests used to produce food and drink. And then H, where is it? I passed it. Members bar. Okay, cool. So it's just this is the bar basically. There is this magical force field. I think there's just a window that kind of shows this. A window that they can see out of. Now, the map of the Spire is sort of weird. I'm not exactly sure why they didn't use... so if we go to the global map, it looks like there's all sorts of spires in here. And I kind of wish that, there was better use of the full thing. If we look at this map, we can see... According to this, I'm not really sure where this bridge is supposed to exist because it's an invisible force bridge that you just fall, it looks like you could fall all the way down out of the tower. I'm not really sure where it's supposed to be here because this bridge is not this little connector here. It looks like the entire Spire resides within this one pillar here. So it's a little strange. I'm not sure why they didn't further elaborate on what all this stuff is. Nevertheless, there's a force bridge, and at the very end, we have Everlast, who is a sort of a conjured magical spirit. This is called the Chamber of Sorcery, and he doesn't really tell secrets about the thing. He just has some basic information. So it's not going to be a I'm your guide. It's just a powerful spirit that is summoned here in this weird looking chamber. And I think that's probably enough that we'll get through. I do intend to further review on my own time the rest of these chambers because I don't think they're going to get through all of this and this in one session. But I do want to have it ready to go just in case because, like I said, you just don't know how much players are going to get through. So I think that's probably where I'm going to end today's stream. So thank you for keeping up and following along. I am on YouTube now. I'm at YouTube. The channel name is bonus action -0. That's the number 0, and that's all one word. So I'll have this as well as past session preps uploaded very soon. I'm still catching up, as well as my Friday night streams, which I've been talking about the game and sort of giving my feedback and take on the one D&D playtests that have been coming out. Next Friday, we'll be talking about 10 changes that I want to see Wizards of the Coast make in future updates. So it's a little bit of my thoughts on the current state of things and the direction I'd like to see them go. 10 things I want to see them change. And then as always, we'll be back here on Sunday. That Friday stream will be at 9 p.m. Central. We'll be back here on Sunday. After that, regular time, 5 p.m. Central for more Sunday D&D prep. Thank you for sticking around, and I will see you all next time.